Mick Foley is rightfully known as the hardcore legend for the name he made for himself by competing in many death matches around the world. Mrs. Foley's little boy has put his body on the line to give fans countless moments of shock and awe, whether he was wrestling under his real name or one of his three faces. Of course, the very best of Foley's extreme moments came under his Cactus Jack persona, unanimously considered to be his most death-defying character. This video looks at Cactus Jack in detail, and all of Foley's highs and lows while playing him. In 1986, Foley debuted in the independent scene under the Cactus Jack moniker, working mainly under his trainer Dominic DeNucci. He'd go by other names while wrestling on WWE television as an enhancement talent. After 2 years, the CWA would become the first major promotion that he wrestled in. This would be followed by a stint in WCCW, a promotion that forced him to call himself Cactus Jack Manson. He'd have moderate success there, but eventually left for greener pastures in '89. WCW would become the financially struggling Foley's big break, as they had the funds and mainstream exposure. Cactus Jack could now be seen by a nationwide audience. But the road wasn't easy as he took a beating in his tryout matchup against none other than the Steiner brothers. The two Michigan hotshots gave Foley and his partner a stiff beatdown. He then turned on his partner and risked his body to deliver a massive elbow drop to him, jumping nearly 12 feet to do so. This match showed everyone how well Cactus Jack could handle and deliver punishment. He impressed the bigwigs at WCW and received a contract, putting his money troubles to an end. The Maniac Jack would team up with jobbers in tag team matches, and when the jobber would lose the match for them, Jack attacked them and delivered an elbow drop onto the concrete floor. Jack also took a brutal bump in his matchup against Mexican superstar Mil Mascaras, as he landed backwards onto the ground with his head taking the fall. He would leave the company for a year following a disagreement with Buckaroli Anderson. During this time, he'd make a name for himself in Japan. Back in the US, he'd have his first ever barbed wire match against Eddie Gilbert, a completely foreign concept in the country. As expected, the two legends put on a bloodbath, ending with Jack in a hangman position in the barbed wire. It was quite a hardcore sight. Upon his return to WCW, Jack would embrace his new personality traits, such as yelling his now iconic catchphrase, "Bang Bang." He became more popular than he was during his first stint, eventually becoming a fan favourite. And then came the magnum opus of Jack's WCW tenure, his feud against Vader. The world champion was known to be the stiffest worker in the game, but that didn't deter Foley. He literally got beaten up by Vader in the first match, but still won via countout, and this was followed by Vader powerbombing Jack onto the exposed concrete floor. This concussed Foley, and he even lost sensation in one of his feet for a while. In their Texas death match at Halloween Havoc 1993, Vader used an actual stun gun on Jack, to everyone's shock. No pun intended. WCW would not book these two greats on pay-per-view again, to keep things family friendly. They kept feuding, eventually leading to one of the most infamous matchups in wrestling history. They wrestled during WCW's tour of Germany, where Jack injured his ear after a hangman spot on unusually tightened ropes. Vader ripped Jack's ear right off, and the two continued to wrestle, while the ref picked up Jack's ear and gave it to the ring announcer. Vader once again powerbombed Jack onto the concrete floor, just like the previous year. However, Foley would soon leave the company after he was frustrated by Eric Bischoff's creative decisions. But before he left, he had a program for the tag titles, choosing to win the belts instead of having reconstructive surgery for his ear. It would also be unfair to ignore that he took another backwards bump onto the concrete during this time, just like he did against Mil Mascaras a couple of years before. And after this, Cactus Jack would end up in ECW. The rough and tough environment of Extreme Championship Wrestling seemed like a perfect fit for Cactus Jack. Jack once showed up at ECW as part of a talent exchange program, while still under contract with WCW, and holding one of their tag belts, and he spat on the belt to get over with the ECW crowd. After becoming a part of the ECW roster in 1995, he began his journey in the land of Extreme in the tag division, teaming up with up-and-comer Mikey Whipwreck. He also feuded with the Sandman in a brutal rivalry, once taking a whopping 46 kendo stick shots during a barbed wire match with him. He'd later team up with Tommy Dreamer, and later became part of Raven's flock. This was the time when Jack had another stint in Japan and competed in some of the most brutal matchups in his career. The highlight was his performance at the Kawasaki Dream event, in which he wrestled various hardcore matches in the same night. We saw it all, which included a barbed wire baseball bat, thumbtacks, a bed of nails, and an exploding ring time bomb. For his troubles, Foley was paid a measly sum of $300. Back in ECW, Jack's relationship with the fans is considered the highlight of his run. Ironically, the ECW fans were just too much for the hardcore legend. From crowd signs targeting his family, to chants mocking his opponent for a botched fall headfirst onto the concrete, he started to resent their demands and edginess. So Jack turned into a heel character, getting rid of all the hardcore traits associated with him. He purposely began to wrestle in a boring style, not giving a shit about what the crowd wanted. Of course, the fans didn't take too kindly to this, and he went the extra step to praise rival companies WWF and WCW on ECW programming. As expected, this got Cactus Jack nuclear heat from the ECW fanatics. Eventually, as he was about to join the WWE, the news quickly spread and he got even more heat. Foley even recalls a roadie selling his t-shirts being spat on by angry fans. He used to be bombarded with "you sold out" chants from the crowd, who didn't even let him speak on the microphone. Foley even used to be fearful of walking to the ring due to the hostile reactions. During his last ever matchup in the company, he faced former protege Mikey Whipwreck, and to his surprise, the fans actually cheered for him, knowing that it was his last outing for them. They begged him not to leave, and after the match, Jack even gave them a heartfelt speech thanking them, and this was followed by an in-ring dance celebration. Mick Foley recalls his ECW farewell as his favourite moment, even up until this day. Now we get to 1996. Where finally Jack would join the WWE, but couldn't use the Cactus Jack gimmick, as Vince McMahon had other plans. So he wrestled as Mankind and Dude Love, two characters who are legends in their own right. In 1997, Dude Love was feuding with Triple H, and he was going to face him in a street fight. But before that bout could take place, we got to see an iconic vignette of Foley's two characters discussing who would be best suited to handle the extreme nature of the match. Both Mankind and Dude Love agreed that the best choice would be Cactus Jack, and as Mankind described him, as someone willing to do worse things than he was. As soon as Jack's name was mentioned, the MSG crowd went nuts, and followed it up by ECW chants. Triple H, who looked very smug before the announcement, started to freak out, and even saying that he wasn't willing to go up against Jack. It was a cool way of showing that Foley's alter egos are completely different people, and that Cactus Jack was the real deal. JR famously said on commentary, "For a man that has wrestled on nails and barbed wire and set himself on fire, this will be a day in Central Park." Jack showed up to the ring with a bunch of different weapons, and quickly removed the protective mats at ringside in signature fashion. He defeated Trips, despite Chyna's interference, blowing the roof off Madison Square Garden. In the 1998 Royal Rumble, all three faces of Foley participated, taking up 3 different spots. But unfortunately, he didn't win. He was eliminated by his old rival Terry Funk, who Foley eliminated the year before as Mankind. And at WrestleMania 14, they'd faced the New Age Outlaws in a dumpster match, and it was a classic. But later on, Foley ditched the character to revert back to Dude Love, and later Mankind. And he'd finally reached the peak of his career, finally winning the WWE Championship to change the course of the Monday Night Wars, and later forming the Rock and Sock connection with The Rock. However, Cactus Jack did briefly return to defeat Ministry members Viscera and Mideon in a handicap matchup back in 1999. The next year, Jack would once again return, as Foley feuded with the WWE Champion Triple H in what would become the last rivalry of his active wrestling career. At their Royal Rumble meeting, Jack fought valiantly, but was defeated when he was pedigreed face first onto a pile of thumbtacks. He'd lose to Hunter once more at No Way Out in a Hell in a Cell match, with his career on the line. But still, he got another opportunity to fight for the title in the main event of WrestleMania in a losing effort. Years later, Cactus Jack returned to feud with rising star Randy Orton, and they'd have a legendary hardcore bout at Backlash 2004, in which Orton survived Jack's onslaught to retain his IC title. And from this point onwards, Foley would appear as himself, but in Cactus Jack's ring attire, as seen during his feud with Edge and his whole run in TNA. Let me know in the comments what face of Foley is your favourite. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, click here for another, and if you want to become one of the Dawgs yourself, check the links in the description.